Welcome to Ecologic. For the month of June, we're having beautiful weather. I was out camping in the Delta, planting trees and watermelons yesterday and fishing one end or the other. Beautiful weather out there. We were expecting rain but didn't get any, so the scouts planted about a mile of watermelon seeds and oak trees, live oaks and cypress on a new island that was built by dredging the Chapelin River. Spent $53 million dredging the river. It's kind of amazing, it's still only 6 feet deep. The spots they didn't dredge very well. But they made a high ridge, maybe 10 feet above sea level, and it probably will sink some, but it's very high. And fabulous place, I think, to plant trees, we will see. So we're fortunate to have with us Greg Guidroz, who is now the manager of Lafayette's yard waste recycling operation. And we're going to talk a little bit about history, how we got started with that, and then what's happening today. So, Greg, do you have an idea of how it all got started?
Well, probably not as good as you, Harold. But I do know the history of the recycling program in Lafayette, and also the yard waste composting program started whenever, back in the late 80s, I think it was.
Yeah, and it
87.
started because we were having a problem with the landfill. We were filling it way too fast. And two big things was sewer sludge, which is over 100 tons a day that was going in there, and then yard waste, which was about 150 tons at that time. So, and we were only producing right at about 550 tons a day, so these were significant percentages, you know.
Right.
And, you know, I think Donald Trump was the public works director, yeah. And I think Jerry Trump. Jerry Trump, yeah, not Donald, he's our president. So Jerry Trump was our, and he went all over the country looking and found, I think in Ohio, one landfill, one compost facility, been running 20 years. And all they did was stack the branches, leaves, and grass in a pile, waiting for it to decompose. And it'd been there 20 years, and at the bottom, the leaves were still leaves.
Wasn't decomposed.
So they had no idea when it would decompose. So anyway, we looked and looked for ideas. We knew that wouldn't work, and ran into a company here in Lafayette that was involved in biomass generation, where you burn leaves and grass and branches that has to be reduced to a sawdust component. And the community they were doing it for used about half for their generator, and about half they sent to landfill. And they found out that once they tub ground it, they could only use it in the biomass generator for about 3 or 4 months. Then it would get so rotten that it would serve very poorly as fuel. So we think rotten means it's decomposing into compost.
That's right.
And
That's good stuff.
nobody in the country had done this, so we pioneered this thing, you know. I think bought a $300,000 or $400,000 tub grinder and started doing it. And we thought it was about 25% of the waste stream, but actually it was more. And think about it, it's about a third of the waste stream, so you're saving, you know, you're prolonging your landfill life by 33, 34%. You know, and why should you put something in a landfill that you can put in your garden?
That's
And
right.
to our astonishment, the compost matured in 5 to 7 months, kind of depending on the year. And so, wow, and then give it away, because it was costing us about $40 a ton to send it to the landfill. Cost $30 a ton, but we had to double haul it. And so this was an enormous saving, 150 tons a day, you know, at $40, what is that, $78,000 a day.
It's quite a bit.
And 30 days is a lot of money.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually did some preliminary numbers
Great.
on what the compost facility is saving citizens of Lafayette. And I think so back in So 89 was the first year I think we had the recycling program, and then the Dean Domain compost facility opened up in 1990. So with the combination of recycling as well as removing the yard waste from the waste stream, we were up to diverting about 30% of the solid waste stream
From the landfill.
from the landfill. And over the last 7 years, the compost facility has definitely grown since
Yeah.
1990. Still a lot of room to grow. And over the last 7 years, just the past 7 years, that facility has generated a revenue from taking in yard waste from tree trimming services. Republic, instead of paying the landfill, now pays citizens of Lafayette to take care of our own yard waste. And then also the amount of money that we're saving from taking that yard waste and hauling it all the way to the landfill. So in the past 7 years of that compost facility generates an asset for the citizens about $6.6 million. So that's almost $1 million.
And we employ people to pick it up, we employ people to process it and so forth. And then there's enormous benefit to anyone who raises a garden, has plants in the yard and all the things that has very beneficial use.
Yeah. Compost it's especially with Trees Acadiana, planting trees around the community. You know, one of the hottest topics around is dealing with drainage and our water issues over here. And the compost, number one, it's lofty and it's like a sponge. So if rain falls
Keeps it wet.
on the soil, it runs off directly without soaking into that hard clay. But if with a compost layer, that compost soaks it up, gets spongy, and then it starts soaking down into the ground. So
Those nutrients go to the roots of the plants, and you can look at the trees on Garfield that has been composted almost once a year. And
Yeah.
they're beautiful.
yeah,
They're
it's
just gorgeous.
an amazing product, has
Yeah.
amazing benefits for the citizens, certainly.
And I've hauled it all over the country, and we've had tree planting projects. And, Henderson, 3 weeks ago, we planted about 20 new trees, and we already had about 20 trees at the Henderson boat landing.
Right.
So we bought a load of compost. We could compost the new trees, the old trees, and then we had another project in St. Martinville. We had enough to go over and compost all those trees. And,
Wow.
you can see how those trees respond. I mean, you compost and you drive by a month later and they've greened up. They look like they, have had a dose of Hadacol.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, not only does it soak up that water and provide that
Yeah.
water to the roots,
Yeah.
as it breaks down, it's adding more and more nourishment to the soil column as well. So
See, when that was going on, we had another big issue with sewer sludge, and that was cost a fortune, because the landfill would only accept it at 20% solid. And it comes out of the plant 5% solid, very liquid,
okay.
So it has to be dewatered, which costs about $40 a ton.
Wow.
And then you haul it to the landfill and pay another $30 or $35 a ton, because $75, $80 a ton. And Louisiana law didn't allow it to put it on hay crops and put it on
Okay.
pasture land and everything. So we put a bill in the legislature. And most of my efforts in putting bills in the legislature has been a total failure. But this one kind of rung a bell. People said, well, that makes sense. They had a choice name for Harold's whatever bill, and they all laughed, but they all voted for it, and so we got it passed. And it based on an Oregon law that had requirements that the sludge be tested daily,
Okay.
and prior to pollutants, it had to have the same standards, couldn't have lead, mercury, and everything else. And we thought, that's not going to be a problem for Lafayette, because we have no industry here. We don't have anybody who put mercury or lead into the sewer system, And, boy, were we wrong. It took 10 months to trace all the crud that was coming into Lafayette sewer system.
Wow.
we had bumper rechroming operations that were each putting 50 to 100 pounds of mercury a day into the drains.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had all the physics, chemistry labs, the high schools and the colleges dumping all that waste chemicals straight down the drain.
Wow. Well, how do you deal with that?
We passed laws. You know, the city just passed, when they found that high school lab, they passed laws preventing it.
Hmm.
You know, then there's no choice, you know. I mean, it's pretty easy for them to track where it's coming from.
Right.
And there was other insults, but then they set up an ordinance that any new facility coming into the system would had guidelines of what they could put in our drains.
Oh.
And so this thing had an enormous effect on not only sewer sludge, but water quality in the bayou.
Sure, sure.
All that mercury is going unnoticed, total into the bayou.
That's right.
You know, and by 10 months, we got every one of those issues resolved and all straightened out. And then it was phenomenal when you put on a hay crop on a pasture land. It had minimal worth in terms of fertilizer. It's 1-1-1, but it creates an aerobic action in the soil. You on the air? Can we help you?
Yes, sir. I have close friends that work in the industry of filtering all the water that goes into all the cities in the South.
Great.
Okay. The only thing is, my friends aren't stupid, and they're wondering, they have this drilling fluid. It's hydrofluoric acid that came from Florida, and they said in order to save money, they're shipping it to all the water depots, and they're using that to purify the water. But he says he doesn't understand why they put hydrofluoric drilling fluid to filter out the chemicals. It's going to get through the filtering system and into our bodies. And that's state controlled now, so he said they're not telling the truth. I mean, you know about the fluoride epidemic.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I had a gentleman, he lived here in this town, and he worked for the DuPont company, and they tried to give him 2 briefcases. He's dead now, he's a World War II vet. They tried to pay him off with 2 briefcases in 1959 to shut him up, and he says they've been putting fluoride since, 1947, and you know that, but my friend at the water company couldn't understand why they would put hydrofluoric acid in all. They're shipping that to all the depots in the South, and it just, like he said, it gets by the people.
Wow.
It shouldn't even be there. I know about the college people shipping, putting their, we'd be surprised what gets down into the drain and where it goes.
Right, and it all shows up. You see these daily tests. That's all the stuff shows up as, they're testing for the power to pollute. And that doesn't cover every chemical insult by any means, but it covers the major problems. And
Yes, sir.
and so
I don't mean the major problem. This gentleman worked for the DuPont company here in this town, and he's dead now. He signed a petition to defluoridate the water, and he said it killed his wife. And he worked for the DuPont company.
wow.
Yeah,
And fluoride is a poison, and
Oh, yes,
we blocked and stopped and raised hell about it. We stopped it in New Iberia, St. Martinsville, and of course here in Lafayette, because that's a just big waste of money. It's putting a chemical insult into your body, And there are places in the world where they have minute quantities of fluoride naturally, and it seems to
Right.
improve teeth, but I don't think you can mimic that. The problem is getting uniform, 1 part per million through the system. Murphy's Law is always there, and that therein lays the problem where you could get much higher levels because of insufficiencies in the distribution process into the water.
And he also said, the gentleman, not only the supervisor, he says the people don't know the difference between chemical fluoride that shouldn't even be there and natural, what you just said, natural occurring fluoride that helps your body.
Two
The
different
chemical
things.
fluoride-
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
And he said there's something else that people don't aware of. They ship from China the sacks of weapon grade runoff and soot. They bring that here and they put that in the water. He said it's got plutonium-235.
Wow.
He said it's part of the New World Order. It's explosive compound in the end. So we're going to have a lot of people's nuclear runoff from waste plants. It's appalling. I found this out, and I couldn't believe that us down here, we're going to let this stuff ship in.
Wow. Well, I
And
mean,
like,
if it's oil field waste, you know, it might be oil field waste in Alabama, Mississippi, but it gets to Louisiana, it's a non-toxic material. There's a miracle that takes place. So thank you so much for your call and your information. Appreciate it very much.
gentlemen.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
sir.
so,
Bye.
yes, sir.
Side benefits. But anyway, the sewer sludge recycling program increases hay production 600%.
Really?
And there's a waiting list for it. It doesn't have much benefit in terms of fertilizer, but it affects the chemical of the soil. Where the aerobic action, anaerobic action in the soil increases, you know, the flow of nutrients to the plants, and you know.
So it's adding microbial life.
Yeah, and you can't use it on things like watermelons or tomatoes or anything that you put it on land. You have to wait 2 years before you have any ground contact plants, like
Right.
cucumbers or watermelons or something like that, carrots or anything in the
What
soil.
about hay? Do you have to?
The hay, no, there's no
Can't
problem with the
harvest
hay.
it
That's
for-
why it's all going to hay crops.
Ah,
It's all going to hay crops, yeah, virtually. And waiting lists, everybody's fighting to get it. And they have these tank trucks with these super big tires, and they just spray it over the field, you know, and it's like a once-a-year application.
really?
Yep, and it saves the city a fortune. And there again, people are employed, people have to, you know, test it every day, and
That's right.
it's that test lab that I think my Vermillion district has taken advantage of for a lot of their testing.
Yeah, LUS
think-
tests all the sewer systems get
So
tested.
Greg, I know you worked with the by Vermillion district, got involved in a recycling program for food waste, and then you were very involved in providing the containers for Festival International and Festival of Cognac, a great service to the community from you and the by Vermillion district
That's
that
right.
encourage you to be that active in the community on issues that weren't maybe directly contacted with by Vermillion, but just better handling of litter means less will go to the body, I guess.
That's right.
That's one of the logic. But
Yeah.
share with us your success on your food waste, recycling, compost, and so forth.
So Vermilionville actually has what we call the rocket composter, and it's an enclosed vessel composting system that actually composts food waste and actually post-consumer food waste from Vermilionville's restaurant, La Cuisine de Mama. And the way that works is the restaurant staff is totally involved, they're totally on board. All the food that comes out from the back of the kitchen goes into separate containers. There's one container next to every trash can. So a matter of...
You separate the rice from the boudin, stuff like that?
No,
The meat
it's-
from,
No, you don't need to separate this machine. It's a totally enclosed system.
really?
Yeah, I'll explain it. But it can deal with meats, it can deal with dairy,
How about chicken bones?
it can deal with small chicken bones, anything except for like the big ham bone or
Oh, yeah, yeah.
or a
okay.
big beef bone.
Yeah.
Chicken
But
bones.
the smaller bones it can handle.
It'll pass
Fish
through
bones
it.
and all that,
It'll take care of fish bones.
yeah.
And it coming out of the system. So the way the system works, it's well. Let me just explain the process. How about that? So.
Is it cost effective? Is it economical to operate?
Is it economical?
Yeah,
to
is it worth
operate?
doing?
Is it worth doing? So, doing numbers, the system has a lifetime of about 15 years. And within that 15-year period, it would actually pay for itself by alleviating the trash on
Yeah.
the backside. So, removing that food waste from the dumpster, being able to cut back on the dump service, It would take about 12 to 15 years to actually pay for the system itself. But if you, and that's just taking into account what it would pay for. I haven't been there to do the analysis that I would have liked before I left. I took the opportunity with the city in the meantime. But taking into account the benefits and the nutrients that come out of that food waste as a compost, if you add that into account and take into account what the grounds of Vermilionville are going to look like in about 5 years after putting all this composted food waste with rich nutrients onto the grounds, the benefits of the gardening program are definitely you're gonna start seeing results.
So
And we're
this
already
is-
starting to see results.
This is a much richer compost material than you'd get from yard waste.
Actually, we use half yard waste in
And
the
half
system. Yeah, so Vermilionville does receive loads of fresh ground material from the city, and the way it works is, so let me just explain the process
yeah.
for everybody on air. So if you go to Vermilionville's restaurant, all the food there, whatever comes off of the tables, goes into buckets whenever it gets taken back into the bus station. The kitchen staff put all the food into separate buckets, and it's a matter of moving over 6 inches. You scrape out the food in one end, and the trash goes into the trash can. And we've reduced the amount of trash coming out of that kitchen probably about 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And one of the greatest benefits of simply monitoring how much food is actually being wasted in the restaurant has allowed the restaurant managers to more closely identify how much food they're actually wasting. So how much food are you putting on the plate, how much food's coming back from your customers that they're not eating. They're full, they're happy, and there's still food on the plate. So that has allowed them to adjust
How much is
adjust
there?
inventory and adjust plate sizes, and everybody's still happy, so that they've actually
Yeah.
cut and started saving on the front end by not wasting that food in the first
Sure.
place. And then just
You
kind of
put-
altering menu
You
items.
put 4 spoons of rice on a plate, or you put 2.
That's right, or 3.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
What's the most
Yeah.
common? How much
Right.
can a person really
Like
fit? in that-
raising the price of a bag of peanuts. You don't raise the price, you put less peanuts in it.
That's right. So once the food gets out of the restaurant, it goes to the rocket composter, and then it's mixed 50-50. So half food waste, half wood chips from the city compost facility. It goes into the system. The system's totally automated. There's a heating blanket, and it monitors temperatures. So the system turns. There's an internal paddle that turns the food waste and the wood chips and makes it into a uniform slurry. And this helps to aerate the system. So you start getting some aerobic decomposition going on inside the system. There's a heating blanket that raises the internal temperatures between 120 and 170 degrees. I think it hovers around 165. And at that temperature, any sort of pathogens that would exist in the food waste, even post-consumer food waste, are basically burned off. So it's getting rid of the pathogens as it's making its way through the system. And then after 14 days, so 14 days later from input, you have a nice little output coming out the backside.
Wow.
It's ventilated. It goes through a carbon air filter to kind of scrub some of the
Did y'all
air
get a
coming out.
grant to set that up?
It was not a grant at the time. However, USDA and NRCS, this was the first year that the Farm Bill included grants for communities to increase community composting and also help to start decreasing food waste. So
But-
food waste is definitely an issue even on the national level.
It's such a great economic opportunity dealing with the whole subject of reuse.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of it, why recycle glass? Why do you recycle aluminum? Aluminum, to actually produce aluminum from bauxite, from the raw material, soil that it's made from, is about 99% electricity.
Yeah,
High electrical use.
right.
And to recycle aluminum into the raw material takes like 10% of the original.
Right.
So it's producing aluminum so much cheaper than
From going to aluminum. And the
And
best
then-
thing about aluminum is it doesn't degrade in
Right, it
elemental
doesn't.
value. So
Yep,
you get the same
yep,
amount of
you see.
aluminum going in as
yeah,
you.
you can have a can
coming out
10
as-
years old and it's still going to be the same weight.
That's right.
We on a camping trip with scouts, we found the beat up aluminum boat, and so we brought it in. Sold that thing for $150. I was
Nice.
kind of amazed. Put the aluminum back into the marketplace.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
But when you think of all the recycling, sewer sludge, curbside recycling, the yard waste recycling, that's over half of Lafayette's waste, the whole
It's a good bit.
combination.
That's right.
And, sewer sludge is 20%, so we have 50% really easily. And then oil recycling is another big thing, and battery recycling. There's a lot of other, nearly all car batteries are recycled.
That's right.
Automobiles are generally recycled, lots
That's right.
of automobiles, parts and components are recycled. So, but the recycling component is, I think, a very important story of Lafayette's, green label, so to speak. We pioneered sewer sludge recycling in the state. We're the first to do it. We pioneered yard waste recycling, successful yard
That's
waste recycling for the country. Jerry Trump and I gave talks from one end of this country to the other. I went to Macon, Georgia, gave a talk to a group, and went to, I think, B County, Texas, and there were representatives from 20 counties only talking about this.
Yeah. Well,
And-
Texas
and-
has definitely done a miracle turnaround with their composting facilities. Yeah. So
They
Texas.
think Houston, that big issue is prolonging the life of the landfill.
Well,
They're building the landfill so quick,
yeah. Well, Texas. Great story. So I've been doing a lot of research about how to use the compost that we have and we're creating at the city.
Okay, it's used two ways now. It goes for biofuel.
That's
I guess,
right.
produced, and then it's used to go in people's gardens.
Compost.
Compost, yeah.
Right.
Those are the two things it's used for.
Right. So Texas DOTD actually buys compost from their various compost facilities throughout the state, and Texas DOTD is actually the largest buyer of municipal compost in the state. They lay compost on alongside the roads whenever
For the
they're
blue
building
bonnets.
roads. Yeah.
For
Well,
the
not only
wild-
that, but the moisture retaining ability of the compost helps to decrease the road cracking from the
Really?
drying and getting wet and then drying out, the amount of
Dehydrating the
cracks that you-
soil.
Yeah. So the cracks on the side of the road are lessened by about 80% by using a compost product along the
Wow.
roadsides of the roads in Texas. Yeah.
That's a heck of a success story.
Yeah, that's a great success story that Texas has had.
Wow, our roads are so beat up, we could, our roads could use all the help it can. And when some, like Texas has pioneered and found this to be successful, why not copy success?
That's right, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
one of the things that
We don't want to copy failure, but let's copy success.
That's right.
What a neat idea,
Yeah.
right? And I think Opelousas recycles yard waste.
I'm not sure
I
how
think they do.
Opelousas' program.
They have a real good program, and their landfill is well run.
It's a great landfill.
They capturing the gas, and
Right.
recycling the gas,
Right.
methane. But I'm almost sure they're picking up yard waste. I don't know if Baton Rouge does that. I know New
Yard
Orleans
waste.
does.
I'm not sure if Baton Rouge is doing it yet, but I think they're trying.
Yeah. But look, I was involved with, after Hurricane Ike, they knocked half the trees of Houston down, mostly water oaks. And it was an enormous problem for the landfill, because they're putting whole trees and branches, which
Right.
takes up lots and lots of room and space, you know,
That's right.
and it's slow to decompose, you know.
If it even.
We had figured Houston would normally use about, said if they recycled their yard waste, it'd be 5,000 or 6,000 tons a day.
Wow,
Would extend the landfill life 30%.
that's pretty
So
good.
you got a landfill with 10 years life, now you're gonna hit almost 14,
That's right.
you know. And sending a product that shouldn't be put in a landfill. You know, could be used for biomass, lots. And one of the problems with biomass, and there's, this company in Lafayette built I think a 5 megawatt biomass unit in Topeka, Kansas. And inconsistency of product. If you're dependent on agricultural products, it's seasonal. And then keeping it dry is another problem. I think dry biomass, you get like 8,000 BTUs per pound. Wet is 4,100 BTUs per pound. So on a dry day, they would get 10 trucks to run the plant. Well, at the rainy period of weather, product got wet and it took 30 trucks, 15, double the amount of trucks.
Right.
And so one of the Lacassine sugar mill, which was just a cider mill, they would just capture the juice. They used biomass, the bagasse from the crushed cane, they used that to run the steam and produce the electricity.
Right.
And they kept it dry. They built a big shed. That was a well-designed plant. And it got on the wrong side of politics, and a lot of people thought it was a big crooked deal. It wasn't. A lot of people thought it was.
Right.
And so, but that was a well-run facility, and they were using the biomass, from sugarcane, as they made all the electricity, and beyond the electricity, they produced 10 megawatts more than they needed, which was sold to energy as
Sounds good.
renewable, electricity. So Lafayette kind of led the way in that whole thing. Lafayette was involved in the 70s in trying to clean up Vermilion Bayou. And one of the biggest problems was oil on the water all the time.
Wow.
And of course, quickly the oil companies got to blame. But you could see a rainbow sheen. If you put a white boat in the water, you could tell where the water line was on the boat. 'Cause
Wow.
it had a black line. There's a black line on everything.
Hmm.
So the Sierra Club got involved and found out there were, out of 54 filling stations that changed oil in Lafayette, only 2 of them recycle oil.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
And it was economical to do it. I mean, you were selling oil for 25, 30 cents a gallon. You needed about 1,000-gallon tank. But, they'd have to have a 1,000-gallon tank. They had to pick it up on these big stations once a week. And so, at the end of the day, he was getting $1,500 a month for what they were throwing away.
Right.
And the whole tank and everything, plumbing you need to collect it, was only $3,000.
So it paid for
So
itself.
in 2 months, it paid for itself.
Wow,
But
that's pretty
plus, so everybody was on board. But met with the Filling Station Association, and oh yeah, we're gonna do it. So 6 months later, we met with them, and only 2 more. So 4 of the 54 stations were recycled. The rest was going to the storm drains right to the bayou. And so, I don't know, I was fumbling through the fire ordinances for the city of Lafayette. And lo and behold, there is not to be placed in the storm drains as a community gasoline, diesel fuel, oil of any kind. So I was in the city hall. So you have the phone number for the fire marshal? Yeah. I said, can I call him? So I called him. said, can I come over? I want to show you something. And so I walk over there and show him, does this mean oil from cars and trucks? Well, absolutely. Oil is oil, isn't it? I says, here's the list of 50 stations that's violating this ordinance.
Wow.
And I had all their names
Right.
and addresses. So the fire marshal says, well, that'll be the end of that. Says, my people will go, and they give them a 30-day notice. Cease and desist,
There you go.
or shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Lafayette got complete with the first city in Louisiana to completely recycle waste oil.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and so that started us on our recycling trip in this community. And it's been, you know, provides enormous savings, great products, and jobs for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of valuable materials in the waste stream, and recovering that material, that value is absolutely important. We're actually working on a project with our GIS department right now. It's if you go onto the LCG website, you'll find a list of different businesses and nonprofits and places around the community where you could actually take some of those things like oil, batteries, so cell phone batteries, car batteries, all these have extremely valuable materials, and it's so much easier, just like aluminum, to mine it out of the old material and the old batteries, as opposed to going to the earth and mining it directly from land again.
Yeah.
So it's called Know Before You Throw. You can find it on the LCG website, and then we're working on a more user-friendly version of that to give people the access of where we can go in the community to drop off these things, because a lot of those things aren't accepted in the curbside bins. But that material is still valuable, and we definitely want to equip people
Give you a
with the
good
knowledge
example of
to where to bring that.
the recycling. A friend of mine from Houston in the car. I was in the car business, so we always had a lot of wrecked cars coming in. And
Sure.
he'd buy 300 wrecked cars a month, and everyone went to Mexico.
Wow.
And you could send a wrecked car to Mexico duty free.
Hmm.
And you can also send refrigerators and freezers and all kinds of other things that don't work. You can't send a new one into Mexico. Well, one that doesn't work, you can send it to Mexico. It'll get fixed.
Nice.
So there's opportunities out there in this recycling business, you know.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
And if that material can be fixed, we're helping other communities, less fortunate communities, actually kind of build themselves up to the level of.
well, I mean, with that, you have the opportunities, you know, for economic enrichment. You
That's
find
right.
a process. This guy was selling, you know, his target was $200 per car. Well, I mean, he's selling 300 of them. Do the math.
That's pretty good.
That's
That's a nice paycheck.
Right. It was amazing. There are things they could fix. They couldn't fix bumpers. So he would put in the trunk the new bumpers they needed to fix it.
Nice.
You know? But the sheet metal, they could fix all of that because they were still using lead. They wasn't using Bondo. They would use lead.
Wow.
And the guys fixing these cars were working for $1 an hour. Letting in the old dents in wings, you know, like
Wow.
they used to do many, many years ago before we had plastic Bondo, you know. So you had some recycled products you wanted to share with us?
Oh, I was just kind of bringing a couple things. This is from the house, right? So aluminum cans, right? So cans. So what's actually accepted in our curbside program? So we got aluminum cans. We have plastic bottles, tin cans, steel cans, and paper. And I don't have any newspapers right here. Let's see, I have a magazine right here. So magazines, cardboard,
Newspapers.
newspaper can all be recycled. Now, this is a pizza box, and pizza boxes are interesting. If there's any sort of food that touches the paper or the cardboard, it's no longer
Really?
good
Recyclable.
to be recycled. Yeah, so if you can imagine my recycling is going to be combined with your recycling, which is going to be combined with everyone from the neighborhood, and then once all that gets compiled into a transfer station and then makes its way over to the material recovery facility, if there's any sort of food that's in there, it starts to become a problem.
Well, you
In
can see
those
why.
facilities,
Yes.
right? As it
Right.
adds up, so it's really important that. So you can see this one. This wasn't a pizza from Dino's or anywhere. This was from the store, and it
So-
came in a plastic bag, so the pizza never touched the.
So that
box,
is
so it's-
recyclable, but
This
it's,
one only because the food did not touch it.
yes,
If
right.
it would have had food that touched it, if it was a take-home
No.
box,
Most
it
of
would
these
not be.
take-home boxes, the food touches it.
That's right. So take-home containers are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
usually good to
And,
recycle.
like Festival International Festival of Cartagena, you had these working with, by the Mid District, you had the recycling bins that went to garbage bins. By the way, it worked fabulous. Because I think you give people an opportunity to do the right thing.
That's right.
They will.
Yes.
And my scouts set up trash and recycling bins at the boat landings of St. Martin Parish.
Right.
And there's 4 barrels, 55-gallon drums open, and one of them says recycling. And it's got the list of, mainly it's plastic bottles and aluminum and steel cans.
Yeah.
And people pretty much follow it, you know. You can,
That's good. Yeah, I think that.
once a week, the parish picks them up, and when they pick it up, they also police the area.
That's
and,
good.
and of course, there's a lot less trash out there. People have a place to put it.
Yeah,
And
and
they
it's
do
key
it
to
on
picking
Monday
it up.
because the weekends are a busy time. Everybody's out in the boats on the weekends. So.
That's usually when it occurs. Yeah, you're right.
And so I think it's, I think that was showed at Festival International. The scouts were involved in that, and as an experiment, working, I think with Waste Management, whoever, we set up in about a 6-block area. We set up waste containers and recycling containers. And nobody was ever more than about 50, 75 feet from a container. And we found the key to make it work is to police them, to make sure they don't overflow.
Yeah.
Because if they overflow, people they won't go to it.
Right.
And they'll throw it on the ground.
Yeah, that's definitely key.
That's key.
Right.
So we found that out. So easy to do. You have a cardboard container, and setting it up, we'd put 20 empty ones at the bottom. So when you pick it up, you had another empty one ready to go
Right.
underneath, so, but I think the city was astonished that it was like 99% less litter in that 6-block area.
Wow.
So it did take a long to figure out, we gotta do it at every stage,
Right.
every throughout,
Right.
and which, really important. We got the people serving, like, at the time we were recycling glass, so where they were selling wine and so forth, we could get those bottles and everything.
Right.
But so Lafayette's got a strong history of recycling, and, it's so important to our community. And with all that is certainly opportunities. And to find them often is a trick, but there's people that find it all over the country.
Right.
And so I commend your efforts, with the Bayou Main District. And I guess when they pick up stuff from the booms and on the bayou, they separate recyclable material pretty much.
No, unfortunately, anything that comes out of the bayou it's gonna have
It's full of mud and water.
it's gonna have a lot of mud and water, and then
Yeah.
it's way too contaminated
Yeah.
to actually be
Yeah.
recycled. So yeah, I used to tell people the best thing you can do, or the whenever you have something in your hand, it has the most value. You can either put it in the garbage,
Yeah,
or it's
the
gonna go to the
amazing thing
landfill, or you
about-
can put it into the recycle bin.
You can go once a year. The Scouts camp on Rutherford, on Hackberry Island
Okay.
near Rutherford Beach, and we'll take 3 35-foot stretches and from the edge of the water to the top of the high water mark. We collect everything.
Wow.
And you have a report, and there's a beachcomber report system that comes all over. We send in the reports, you know, how many water bottles. And in 35 feet, typically, you'd have 30 to 40 water bottles.
Wow.
Now, there's one per foot. Think about it, in a mile, you got 5,000 water bottles.
Yeah, it's amazing to see them
And
trash
then,
in.
you would have things like cigarette lighters, things like amazing, not a lot of styrofoam you'd see. You would have beer cans, you know, and crazy things like batteries and stuff wash up, you know.
Right.
The containers they use for refrigerant, for air conditioning systems, they show up, you know. You're on air, can we help you?
Hello. I have a question about recycling. A couple of questions, please. First of all, can you recycle aluminum foil if it's clean?
If it's clean, technically it can. They don't prefer it in the recycle bin only because, so the technical answer is yes. If it's wadded up into a ball, if it's already been wiped off and there's no food on it, that's not an issue. So yes, you could.
Food contamination is a big no-no
Yes.
for anything going into the recycling system.
That's right. So even a coffee cup, even if it's a paper coffee cup, if it's touched food or anything, it needs to be cleaned out. Paper cups cannot be cleaned out. Styrofoam cannot be recycled. The best thing for coffee would probably be a reusable coffee mug.
Yeah, thanks. The next question is about plastic. I've been reading the plastic recycling industry is having real issues that China is not accepting or is accepting less plastic, or I'm not sure how that works. What information do you have on that, please?
So as far as plastics, so I don't have a water bottle here because I usually carry my own. But if it's in the shape of a bottle or if it's in the shape of a jug, that's the type of plastics that the industry is still taking. Once China put a halt to taking recyclables from the United States and a good part of the rest of the world, that really did hurt the recycling industry. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff was still ending up as trash only in China instead of our backyard. So it's not here anymore, but that plastic actually did wind up as a lot of trash in China. So anything like, if you're familiar with the triangle, anything 3 through 7 is not a valuable enough material, nor do we have the infrastructure to deal with that to actually be recycled. So beverage bottles and jugs such as like dishwashing liquids, and if it looks like a jug or if it looks like a bottle, that's the only plastic that's actually acceptable. Now this had Coffee Mate in it, so you would definitely want to rinse it out. So this one's actually clean. And you just put a little bit of water in there, screw the topper on, I give it a little shake, and then rinse that out about 3 times, and then it's pretty much done, and all the Coffee Mate is out. There's nothing left in the bottom of it. And then you want to get the water out, and then you can put the cap back on and then stick that in your recycle bin. Plastic bags are actually not something that you want to put in the recycle bin. If you put your recyclables in a plastic bag and put that into the recycle bin, once it goes through the process, it gets into the truck, it goes to the transfer station, and when it gets to the MRF, the sorting machines that separate these materials into the separate streams, these plastic bags become tanglers, and it clogs up the machines, and it becomes a huge issue. So never any plastic bags in the recycle bin. And so recycling you got reduce, you got reuse, and then you got recycle. So instead of using the plastic bags, if you have your own little reusable bags, that's the best thing to do. I
Yeah.
mean, at Walmart you can get these for like $1 a piece, and once you collect enough of them, if you
You got all
make
you
sure to
need.
keep some in your car or vehicle, and then you'll have them whenever you go to the shopping store. That's best case. That's what we need.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, thank you, appreciate your call.
Thanks.
And you touch on another really important point. How can we take single-use items and reuse them? And something we use a lot is just, drink bottles and fill them with water and make ice. I hardly ever buy ice to go fishing.
Right.
I got these frozen bottles, they work fabulous, I reuse them over and over again. Camping, we'll use ice bottles to keep, our stuff fresh and so forth, and it melts into your drinking water.
That's right.
This is, and you can use it over and over again. It's simple, simple, simple. So, and I often wonder why somebody like McDonald's or Burger King or whoever doesn't offer a multiple-use container with their name on it, where when you get it refilled, you get it refilled for half price. Whatever.
Yeah.
And then all the cups, the biggest expense of these drinks are the cups. That expense goes away, and everybody's walking around with your advertisement.
Yeah.
I just wonder, why don't we do that, Get rid of zillions of cups, because you go on the roadside picking this stuff up, and those cups are there, everywhere they're there, So evidently people, have ice in a cup, they don't want to set it down in their car, they throw it out or whatever, We learn a lot from going along the roadside and picking all this stuff up, And you mentioned it earlier, each thing that flies out of a car or whatever came from someone's hand
That's right.
who made a decision, I don't care about our area, our community, I'm gonna trash this place.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and you see things like mattresses and, sofas and televisions that don't work. It's amazing what's dumped,
Yeah. It's unfortunate, and the city does. 20 years ago.
And refrigerators and freezers, they're lined with styrofoam now, so you can't sink them. So they end up on value, they go on forever.
They do.
You wouldn't believe what those things end up.
They end up. They float quite a bit.
It is amazing what you see on the beaches, and the recycling. We were involved with the beach sweep, and we got a hold of got involved with the oil companies on reducing all the trash they use. And one of the things that showed up on the beaches everywhere were the collars they use on the boomers for seismograph work. They drag these 6 booming devices, and they can measure instead of using dynamite, they drag these boomers.
Right.
And it records the sound
Density.
waves going into
Yeah.
whatever. But they throw these boomers away 6 a day. So they're running all over the Gulf, so these things showing up, and there's only one place it comes from.
That's right.
And so Exxon said, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna number the boomers. You go out with 200 boomers, 1 through 200, bring them all back, you don't get paid.
Wow.
Batteries were showing up. Can you imagine a battery washing up on a beach?
Wow.
Do you think, how can that happen, And so they realized that when you went out to a rig to change the battery, instead of bringing the batteries back, they just pitch them overboard. Now, when they go pick up a rig, they gotta clean the bottom. They gotta send a diver to pick up that battery.
Wow.
And so they quickly realized, you bring a new battery out, you have to bring the old battery in. So by contract, and then Exxon eliminated all styrofoam, all single-use containers.
That's great.
They went to stainless steel plates, stainless steel cups, They went to aluminum for all their drink containers, no
Wow.
plastics. They had to be aluminum containers. And they recycle the aluminum. This is platforms all over the Gulf. It was providing, just the recycled aluminum out of the Morgan City office was producing $3,000 to $5,000 worth of recycled aluminum, which they gave to the school system in grants.
Wow. That's
So we got close to the end. Thank you. It's been very enlightening. Greg, good luck in your
It's always
new
great.
recycling operation. I think you've had a life of recycling.
I've been doing it for
So,
a while.
and thanks for sharing your knowledge with the community in this program. And we pledge to help you in any kind of way. And probably a lot of good ideas out there on how we can do better, recycle more.
Thank you,
So
sir.
again,
Thanks for having
thank
us
you,
on.
and thanks for, we use your product in the garden, plant trees all over the place, and it's been wonderful. And since you've taken over, we see a lot of improvements, including very courteous people. They're always real friendly, maybe because they know that my daughter works with us. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Harold.